Welcome to another screencast. So in the last screencast, we learned how to create a database connection with MySQL. In this video, we will create the entity that will represent our database table, and we will learn how to insert values using that entity into our database. So let me open my MySQL workbench, open my connection, and if we see our schemas, we have our node schema, and inside nodes we have the columns ID and node. So what we have to do is we have to go into our IntelliJ IDE and create a node entity. So I'll delete this one and restart again. So what we will do is we will create an entities package, and inside that we will create another Kotlin file and name it node entity. So what an entity is it's basically a Kotlin object that will represent how our database table looks like. So in our case, this nodes entity this will inherit from a class called table, which will come from KTORM, and it takes a generic parameter. So this generic parameter is the entity's class type, which the current table is a binding to. But in this case, we don't have any binding to any entity class, so we will pass nothing into this generic parameter, and then here we will pass our table name. So our table name was nodes. If node. So if you open MySQL workbench, you can see our table name was node. So we will pass the same table name here. So now the next thing that we have to do is we have to create some properties here that will represent the columns in our database. So the first column in our database is ID, which was a primary key. So here what we will do is we'll create a column, a property, and it will be of type int, and we will get this type int from let's see. Yes, so we will get this int from the column type. It is also coming from KTORM, and here we will pass the column name that is in our database, which is ID. And as this ID is a primary key in our database, we will make it a primary key. So what this int is, it's an extension function to the table class. So all these are extension functions, and they return basically a column. So the second column in our database is node. So we'll write node, and this is of type varchar. So we have these types like int, varchar in KTORM as well, which corresponds to the data types in our database. So we will write varchar, and the column name is node. So now we have created a nodes entity which represents our database table. So the next thing we will do is we will open our application, and then here below the database connection, we will insert some values into our database. So how we can do that is we will do database dot insert, and in this insert function we tell which to which entity are we inserting the values. In our case it is node entity, so we will write nodes entity, and then it gives us a closure at the end, and here we will call set, and it gives us an assignment builder which is of type nodes entity. So in this case we will tell this set function that we wanna set a node, and then here we will set the text for the node. So in our case we will say study KTOR. So that's all we have to do to insert the value into a database using KTORM. So we will try to run this application. So you now see that the server is running successfully without any error, and it's also logging that insert statement was run, and it affects one row in the database. So to test it, we will open our workbench. We will basically use our database and then do select star from node. So you can see that here is our first node that we have entered. Similarly, we can add multiple nodes at a time. So I'll change this because I don't want to add study Ktor again. So we'll do wash clothes, and then we will copy this multiple times, and then we'll write buy groceries, and then we'll write workout. So when we run the server again, so now you see that the insert statement was run 3 times. And now if you go to workbench and run this statement, you can see we are seeing all our three newly added nodes into the database. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we will learn how to read the values from the database.